All right, we're 1 minute past the hour, so let's get started. Good morning and welcome to Unlock Sustainable Funding, Leveraging Individual Donor Development for Substance Misuse Prevention with Wendy Ogren. This presentation was prepared for the Great Lakes PTTC under a cooperative agreement from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, or SAMHSA. The opinions expressed in this webinar are the views of the speakers and do not reflect the official position of the Department of Health and Human Services. I've got a few housekeeping items. If you have technical issues, please individually message me, Rebecca Buller, in the chat section at the bottom of your screen. For questions, please post those in the Q&A section and we'll monitor that and won't lose your question in the chat as it rolls by. For captions, use your Zoom toolbar near the bottom of your screen and choose Live Transcript. AI note takers are not allowed in our trainings and you will be removed from our Zoom webinar. Certificates of attendance will be sent via email to those who attend the session in full. It takes about 2 weeks for that to happen. And do look in your inbox. Sometimes it goes to junk and spam, so please check those as well. And now I'd like to introduce our presenter. Wendy Ogren came to the Center for Nonprofit Management in 2022 with over 30 years of experience working with nonprofits and congregations on program development, implementation, and evaluation. And now I'm going to turn things over to Wendy.
Good morning, all. I'm so glad to be with you this morning. Greetings from Dallas, Texas, where we are in fake fall. Fall is the time of year, and it's going to be 80 degrees today. So I'm a little jealous of those of you who are experiencing real fall in your areas. Okay, I believe I have now shared my screen, but I want to make sure. Yes, that sounds.
Yes, you have.
I have. Excellent. Okay. Well, again, really pleased to be with you today. Enjoyed so much the last time I was able to be with you, and so looking forward to our time together. I'm Wendy Ogren. I'm the Vice President of Operations here at the Center for Nonprofit Management. I'm a nonprofit programs person, is the way I typically describe myself. So 30 years that Rebecca mentioned seems like a long time, but I started my nonprofit career actually in Minnesota at the Second Harvest Heartland Food Bank. And that's where I fell in love with working in the nonprofit sector, particularly with folks who were in need. Transitioned again from there to early childhood development and served a large nonprofit in the Dallas area with Head Start and Early Head Start, and got a little taste of the joys and the sorrows of federal funding, which I know so many of you are very aware of. And then I have transitioned here to the Center for Nonprofit Management, where I have enjoyed supporting organizations in a consultant and training role across a wide variety of mission spaces, including the substance misuse prevention space and the folks who are doing really great work in this area. I'm the mom of 2 boys and an almost daughter-in-law. In July, I have an attorney and a rock star. I don't know if you can tell who's who from the picture, but I'm really enjoying this stage of life with adult children. They're awfully fun. So today we're going to discuss a donor-centered approach to fundraising, and we'll spend some time identifying donors and talking about the donor life cycle. There are a number of ways to approach fundraising, and a healthy fundraising development plan will have multiple pieces to it, but we're going to shine a spotlight today on the individual donor piece, which can be extremely impactful. So the basic giving pyramid, which you may be familiar with, is just a helpful tool to think through some of your fundraising development planning, starting at the bottom, which can be occasional gifts or first-time giving, and these can be small gifts, and this is where individual donors often start their journey. And so this might be a giving day where you're asking folks to give $20 or $25. This might be please share with a friend for a one-time direct appeal, even through social media. That goes up oftentimes to more structured annual giving campaigns, special events that so many of you hold, whether that's a gala event or a picnic or a skeet shoot or whatever it might be. Membership drives, really targeted online giving, direct mail, maybe at the end of the year, e-philanthropy. All of those kinds of gifts typically are on an annual basis. Major gifts are what we think about when we think about a giving campaign. Program gifts, certainly the grant writing that you do, particularly with foundations. Those often have a cyclical cadence to them. And we spent some time at the last training that I was with you talking about how to look at foundation grants as well as corporate grants. And then the typically the most bang for the buck are planned gifts. And these are requests, they're memorials, they're honorariums, and these are often very large gifts given by very few people, but can be very impactful. So individual donors can enter this pyramid at any stage, from the bottom to the top, but oftentimes they will enter at the bottom, and then part of our work is to help them grow up the pyramid. So we'll spend our time today talking about these individual donors. I'd love to hear from you, and in just one or two words, how would you describe your current donor relationships? Put that in the chat, would you? And let's talk about that just a moment. How would you describe your current donor relations? And I don't have any. It's a perfectly valid response. Scarce, sure. Small but growing. Okay. Informal. Just have federal grants, sure. And I know that's the most common funding mechanism for your mission space. Okay. Some good connections and consistent. Great. So we're kind of all over the map there. One source can lead to more. What individual donors? I get it. Well, and I'll be honest, I would much rather write a grant than ask someone personally for money. I think a lot of us feel that way. And so this can be an area that is challenging for us in the field. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I like this quote because it's encouraging to me. Maybe it will be to you. Fundraising is not about hounding people to give. It's about aligning people's deep desires for their community and the world with your solution. And in your mission space, you have a wonderful solution that is impactful in your communities. And so sharing the opportunity to partner with you in that mission, I think can be really compelling. So sometimes we talk about transactional versus relational fundraising. Transactional is often, particularly historically, what we have thought about with fundraising, particularly with individual donors. It's those one-time gifts, kind of that immediate revenue, which heaven knows we need from time to time. Pretty centered on the organization with the messaging, not a lot of donor engagement, and there's minimal follow-up. So, we're gonna thank people, but we're not going to steward that. It's a transaction. But what we have found that is much more effective, and that funders, even foundations and corporate organizations are looking for, is more of a relational approach. So this is ongoing donor stewardship. And I would say that's true not only for individual donors, which we'll clearly spend our time talking about, but also for foundation giving, because foundations, or even your Even some of the state and federal folks, if you have a TTA specialist for your federal grants, you need to be stewarding that relationship. It's focused rather than one-time gifts, it's focused more on a lifetime value. And so there's that donor-centered approach that's building trust and connection, alignment with your mission. And so that does require more consistency with engagement with the donors, with gratitude, with involvement for those donors. And so it's more time consuming. I will absolutely say that for your organization, but it tends to really provide much more benefit than a transactional approach. So I'd love to test your instincts a little bit just for fun. I'm going to read off some common fundraising behaviors, and you give me an icon or something in the chat that indicates thumbs up or something that builds relationships, something that would hurt relationships, or something that might be neutral, or the answer would be it depends, because sometimes that's true as well. So let's do that. Get ready for that, and let me give you some scenarios here. Only contacting a donor at the end of the year. Is that a thumbs up, thumbs down, red, green? What does that feel like? Red. Neutral. Okay. Yep. I like your icons here. Red, thumbs down. Yeah, that we clearly want to do that at year end, but we certainly don't want to limit it to year end. How about handwritten thank you note? Yeah, everybody likes a handwritten, don't we? Isn't it sad to go to the mailbox and only get bills or flyers that you're going to recycle? Yeah, everybody likes something that's a handwritten, some kind of card or note. That really goes a long way. Even if you're doing something that is a kind of a regular stock thank you note at end of the year, if you can have your staff or a board member or volunteers or a client do a handwritten thanks so much, that will add to your printed letter quite a bit. How about sending an email with program updates? Yep. Typically, that's a really good idea. The only thing I would say that you would need to be cautious of, and it might be a maybe, is if someone has kind of said, don't blow up my, yeah, unless you don't want to hear or get outreach. Exactly, Kathleen. If someone has said, don't bother me, don't fill up my inbox, then you just want to be, of course, respectful of that. Waiting a year to say thank you. Our moms taught us better than this, right? Yeah, that's no good. Yeah. I'm glad that that has some humor to the day. How about inviting them to volunteer? Yeah. It can be a great way to get engagement, but it can be neutral and kind of with the answer of it depends. So yeah, y'all are right on track with that. It depends on, of course, the person. Some people love to volunteer, some people do not. And so again, it's kind of depending and knowing who your donors are, again, with that stewarding the relationship can be really important here. All right, thanks for playing that. Here's a definition I like about a donor-centered approach. It's a collaborative approach to fundraising that inspires donors to remain loyal longer and give more generously sooner, which is what we want for impact for the families and individuals that we're serving. So let's think about understanding our donors, and what I'll share are certainly broad brushstrokes, and there's a lot of it depends, and you know your community best, and so trust your instincts on this. But I do hope that some of these principles will be helpful to you as you're kind of thinking through who might be a good candidate for being an individual donor for your organization. So there's a book titled The Seven Faces of Philanthropy, a new approach to cultivating major donors. And I think it's pretty on target with the way they characterize and provide this framework for donor types to help us maximize that effectiveness when we're asking people for gifts. And so the first framework piece they use is the communitarian. And these are folks that are most common in the donor community. And they want to focus on how to make their communities a better place to live and work. And so doing good makes sense. These are often folks who are serving on your boards. And again, the most common kind of donor face that we would say. Then we have the devouts, and those are folks who really equate giving with God's will and doing good. They often support outreach work. These are your mission work folks who are supporting that. Feel like they are blessed with financial resources, and they want to see that as a way to promote good in the community. And that's again part of their faith commitment is to give back. These folks don't always like to be recognized. So that's something to remember. And we'll talk more about what that might look like. The investor is taking a more practical approach, and doing good is good for business. So these are folks who are going to probably do more research on giving and on what needs are in their community. They are looking for measurable return on investment. So this is where your impact, your outcome statements, all of those from your logic models that you do so well are going to be impactful here, because that is the kind of information that they are going to want to do. Often not as interested in being on a board because it's a much more practical, analytical approach. Socialites are doing good is fun. These are your chairs for your events. The hosts for things that you provide, they're going to leverage their relationships with friends and family. You can put them to work by following up with people after an event, donor recognition, donor appreciation. These are your party planners, and you want them on your team in some way. Next is the altruist. Doing good feels right. These folks actually rarely serve on a board. They are donating because of moral obligation. They tend to be modest and, again, not want recognition. They may not tell you at all. They may give anonymously. So that's kind of the category. The repayers typically, again, don't seek recognition. They may have been a former recipient of a nonprofit services, or had someone in their family or that they're in relationship receive services. And so giving back to the organization is important for them. Often don't want a high level of investment as far as probably not going to volunteer things, although again, a generalization. But this is actually one of the profiles that I think might be really helpful in your mission space. So as you work with folks with substance misuse, prevention. And then the dynasts believe that doing good is a family tradition. These are often folks who come from wealth. They're very selective about their giving and their philanthropy. Sometimes they'll use outside advisors or a family foundation or a United Way, but they'll give to that. And then the United Way gives to other organizations in the community or some kind of community foundation. But that's kind of what is driving them in their giving. So again, a generalization, but maybe helpful to you as you think about the different kinds of folks who would be potential donors to your organization. So let's think about what motivates donors to give. And this is a great question to ask your teams. But donors might give because they're mission driven, right? Again, one of those profiles that we looked at. They might give because they trust your organization. For them to trust your organization, they need to know about it. They see the impact again, sharing your outcomes. What is the difference you're making in your community? It's important. They might have that personal connection to your cause, or they want to be a part of something. Actually, giving can be really fun. I mean, there's all kinds of research that says it actually makes you physically and mentally healthier to give back. And if it's part of we want to be involved in something bigger than ourselves. I talk a lot about this when I'm talking with folks about recruiting volunteers, but it also goes with recruiting donors. You caught their attention in some way. That's that marketing piece. They might want the tax benefits, which is a perfectly legitimate reason to give. What's not on this list is they might feel guilty. I started my career in congregational ministry, and I will tell you, I was not above using a little guilt for getting someone to teach a Sunday school from time to time if I was really desperate. So that's sometimes a reason, and a lot of good can come from that. But it's not something that we typically say. Um, that's a motivator factor. So if we need to know why people are motivated to give, it's also helpful to know why donors stop supporting an organization. And again, I'd love to tap into the collective wisdom of this group and stick in the chat for me. Why do you think donors stop supporting an organization? Why have you stopped supporting an organization if that's true for you? Money runs out. That's absolutely a reason. Someone just passes on. Yeah. Lack of ask. Yeah. Good observation. What else? Spending more than my gift on mailings. Yep. Do not get fancy with me. I don't want my donation to go towards this. Yep. Move to new donor. Yep. New causes. Yep. That absolutely can happen. Misalignment, negative experience. Yeah. Agency pivots. Absolutely. You guys are right on. Yep. So you can see that there are many, many reasons. Oh yeah, negative press really is tough when that happens. You can see there's lots of reasons, but let's go over a few more. Some of the reasons that donors stop giving is just like some of you said, they don't know the impact, and there's insufficient impact reporting. And that's something we can fix and should. So being intentional about, again, sharing the so what, why this matters. Sometimes they don't feel appreciated or valued. They might not have been thanked quickly enough or at all. They don't feel connected. So the communication with them, the engagement is lacking. Again, some people want to be connected and some people don't. And so knowing the preferences of folks is an important component of this. They might feel taken advantage of. Some of you were mentioning that, kind of feel like an ATM. Well, they sure are spending my money on a lot of, you know, expensive marketing material, or this gift that they've given me for donating something took up half of my donation. They don't like that. That feels, again, very transactional, and we're trying to get away from that transactional feeling for sure. Again, some of you mentioned their financial situation just may have changed, and that happens. They can no longer afford it, and that may be true right now more than ever. They change their focus. Other causes become more important. We had a donor situation that I was working with, and they were really focused on early childhood education, which was great, and they were a great donor. And then they had a grandchild who was diagnosed with Down syndrome. And so they changed their focus to giving priority to organizations that served children and families that had Down syndrome in their family, as they should, right? That's not anything we can do anything about. And again, we want to be gracious and support them in that way, and realize that is a risk for us as people who are needing those donations for our own organization. So then we want to think about why donors continue to give, donor retention, right? And this, again, is some of what motivates them in the first place. but they perceive an organization to be effective. So those are your outputs on your logic model, right? The things that are effective and efficient there. Knowing what to expect with each interaction. So people often do not like to be surprised, right? And so they want to know enough about you, and that's building a trust with them. Again, feel appreciated. And that often does not take much. It's amazing what a Starbucks gift card or a personal email will do. And if you have a picture to include to say, man, I was working with this kid today, and your donation helps us to buy the educational materials we need. Here's a picture of Susie, or whatever it is. We were talking with these junior high kids about the risk of using illegal substances, and this is making a difference to change the narrative here. Here's a picture. Can go a long way. They continue to give because they share your views, right? They feel a part of an important cause. And because they receive communication demonstrating impact. You'll see this again and again, demonstrating impact, showing your effectiveness and your efficiency. All of those are actually donor retention strategies. So when you're talking to your data folks, know that that is actually a fundraising issue as much as it is reporting to your state and federal grants issue. So we always have to get SMART goals in here somewhere, right? So setting SMART goals for donor retention is important here, just like it's important with any other thing. You want to be specific to make your goals as precise as possible. You got to measure them, establishing a criteria that you're going to use. Certainly accountable. Who's going to help you reach your goal with this individual donor? You got to do reachable, set small goals towards bigger goals. We want 10 people to give $50 this year, and then we want 5 of those people to turn into $100 next year, and make those small steps lead towards bigger steps. And then, of course, creating a timeline for that helps keep you and your team accountable and on the right path. So here are just some, a little bit of random tips to strengthen that donor retention. Hate to say it, but you're a donor manager. If you're working in the nonprofit space, if you're working in this space where you need outside funding, you're a donor manager. And so you can think about grouping donors or tailoring responses and things to help you be more efficient in your work. So maybe you do a giving circle for everybody that's given $1,000 or whatever, and that's a group that you're working with. Maybe you're working with a group of folks who have had family members affected by substance misuse. Maybe that's a group. So you can categorize things to kind of help you with your donor plan. But it's all about building relationships. So that is everything from a handwritten note to taking someone to coffee to making sure they get regular updates from you. And then ask them why they give, right? Through conversations, through a survey, through a focus group. Sometimes that is a great entry point for individual giving. And you might not be asking about why they give to you. You might just be asking, what motivates you to give to our community? You'll find out a lot if you ask the question. You may want to think about investing in some kind of technology and leveraging that data to share your impact. So I'm guessing many, if not most of you, have technology that you're tracking a number of things, particularly if you're funded with federal or state funding. And so using that to your advantage to share your impact can be helpful. And then being intentional about communication and customize it when possible. So that just takes planning, right? We want to send out a newsletter when? Every week, once a month, once a quarter? How can we customize it? Is that MailChimp? Is that somebody just changing the name of the person on the email? What is that? So again, just some intentionality. And then don't be afraid to invite a second gift sooner rather than later and offer recurring gift options. That works really well for our local public radio. I'm a sustainer. I give a dollar amount every month. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to, um, remember to write a check or to do it online. It just comes out of my bank account every month, and I don't think about it, right? So recurring gifts can be really impactful. Okay, let me stop here and see what questions you might have. Let's see. I see a lot of things in the chat.
Wendy, I was wondering if I could follow up with one of your suggestions. Nobody wrote a question. I was waiting for it to come up, but I'm guessing some people are curious about. I love your idea about as you're doing work, as preventionists are out doing their work in the community, and things are happening that you could take that. Gosh, due to what you gave, we were able to do this. One thing you mentioned was taking pictures and photos and sending those. In our prevention code of ethics, we're really clear about what we can do with pictures, and all the ethics around that and the permissions and all that. And I'm just wondering if you have any guidance for being able to do this in a way that we don't break any code of ethics, that kind of thing. I wondered if
Sure, sure.
example.
Thank you for bringing that up. We had the same issue when I was working with young children, right? So we did lots of backs of heads where you aren't showing a face, but you can do that in a way that, if you're taking from the top and have someone who's, you can keep that anonymous. I would guess in your case, and would do this a lot with teachers, we would actually highlight taking the picture of the teacher who we had permission. There was a staff person with the children looking at them. So if you had students or participants looking at a presenter, you could do that. You can even just take pictures of objects rather than people. Do you have a stack of promotional material or educational material that you're using? Take a picture of that and just say, here's just a little piece of what we were doing this morning as we were out in the community with education. Anything just to gauge some interest and say, what you're doing and providing for us is helping us to provide for others, which is really the message you want to get across.
I love that idea, and just having real specific, tangible kind of things that's really helpful. I know I'm part of a giving circle here in town, and we have an annual gala, is what they call it, and they bring in the people who we've given money to, and they share exactly what has happened. And I remember the first time I went, I was like, "Oh, wow, my money's actually doing something." That what I'm giving,
Yeah.
and it definitely pulled me in. So I love that idea.
And this is part of marketing, right? Which is part of philanthropy and fundraising, and the whole idea of showing and telling impact. And so, you can even do a picture of a graphic that says we made this many visits to school this month. And so that's just a bar graph or pie chart or whatever you want it to be. So again, showing and telling is what we're going for here.
Love that idea. Great. And I'm wondering, I think we have a little bit of time. Oh, actually, there is a question in the Q&A. I'll pull that up first.
Great.
Sharon says, if you do not have a donor list, can you provide any advice on developing a donor list from scratch?
Absolutely. And we're gonna do that in the next section. So that may be a great tee up for the next section. That's a great question.
Great. All right. And I'm wondering, I know we have a few more minutes here before we move to a break. I'm wondering if it would be all right if we unmuted a few folks, if they have ideas of how they have been doing some of this work in terms of pulling donors in and the reasons their donors give, or if they've seen people stop giving, of why. Is that okay?
Absolutely. Would love to hear from the group.
Great. So if anybody would like to share with the group, you can raise your hand, your virtual hand, and then we can unmute you. So if you have an example of some of the things that Wendy's talked about so far, that would be great. I know there was lots in the chat. All right, we've got Rita. All right, Rebecca. Yep, there we go.
Am I
Rita,
unmuted?
there you
Sorry,
go.
can you hear
You're
me?
good. Yes.
Um, I just wanted to share, so just a little bit background on us. Short or very small nonprofit agency. We've been in business for more than 58 years now. So obviously our list has over and over changed. We always do uh, any event that we have or any time we do anything that's reaching out a mass amount of our donors, we always put it on our board of directors to bring like 3 new people to the table. Ask each board of director to kind of bring in 3 new names and addresses that we could send an invite to or send a donor request to, so that we can introduce them to. And I would say the last couple of years, or I've been with the agency for 19, executive director 3 of those 19. And I started putting out, like we always did an end of the year ask, but it was just a letter. And I started doing where we did kind of taking our annual report and making that smaller and sending it out and actually showing our past donors and new donors what we're doing with their money, which I think that upped the most donations that we got in with our end of the year report, because it really did give that picture of what we were doing. Now, I want to say it had all to do with that, but who knows? But I mean, I think it was the first time that besides one of our events that we actually started showing really where our dollars were going, and we really saw an impact on that one. So I say that that is definitely a positive. Yeah. So that's my
Yeah,
2 cents.
that's a great example. And really that board engagement and giving is so important. I know a number of funders, I'm thinking about some community foundations that will ask what percentage of your board gives, right? And they don't typically ask how much, but they ask what percentage. And the right answer there is 100%, right? So even if you, and so that's sharing that with your board and letting them know this is so important, because not only does it help the organization, which they want to do, or they wouldn't be serving on your board, but it actually is a funnel to get more funding because so many funders are asking about this. And even if they don't ask, if you have 100% participation and giving from your board, I would highlight that in any grant request or impact report that you produce, because it really shows that buy-in. And so those are such great suggestions of getting them to really take ownership and help with this, which honestly is part of their role, right? So so well done with that. Few things in the chat. Yeah, have the board ask 5 people who you know just to share about the mission. That's not asking them to give. That's just asking them to share about your organization. Sometimes you can say, would you be willing to do a tour with 2 of your friends or neighbors or colleagues or whatever, and they can do that. Again, there's no ask there. That's just education. And we clearly want it to lead to an ask, but that's not what you're requiring folks to do. QR code on Happy New Year cards, great idea. Yeah, for giving, yes, I agree. How question should be, how much does your board give or raise for the organization? That's certainly ideal. Yes, absolutely. These are great, great responses here. Anything you can do to make that giving easier, and the QR code is a great example of that. You want to do that, right? I'm very proud of myself that I've learned how to do QR codes, and it's not hard at all. And if I can do it, anybody can. But making sure we have those on all of our materials, on our email signature, on whatever that goes to a give button on your website. You may not get a ton at first, but you certainly, that is a very, that's low hanging fruit for you, that you can put that together and have that as an option for people, particularly younger generations who just want to scan a code. So yeah, have a QR code in everything you print. Absolutely. That is certainly best practice. Great comments.
Great suggestions. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you so much. Well, let's keep going because I think we will be addressing some things that will be helpful for you as far as exactly what this might look like. So let's talk about the donor life cycle.
Wendy, I wondered if we could take our 5-minute break.
Oh, thank you for remembering. Yes, we absolutely can. Let's take 5 minutes and get your coffee refreshed or take a stretch break, and I'll see you in a few. Welcome back, everyone. During our break, I did think of just one more thing that I might address around board giving, since that was something we were touching on before we took a little break. Just to give you some ideas, different things that I've seen. Sometimes an organization will require a specific amount from their board members. So part of the bylaws of the board are to give a $5,000 gift every year. Sometimes that can be couched as a give-get, meaning that you can write a check for that, or perhaps your employer has a program that they will match a donation or contribute on your behalf. And so that can be a give-get. Sometimes that give is even someone's time or expertise. Sometimes, particularly for smaller organizations, that's really helpful. So no, I can't write you a check for $5,000, but I'm an IT expert and can give you $5,000 worth of assistance with your IT situation or something like that. Other times, a nonprofit will say, we want all of our board members to give a gift that is, quote, significant to them, personally significant. So for Wendy, that's going to be a smaller amount than for some other folks. I'm in the nonprofit sector after all. So you can do that perspective. And even if you are a government agency and don't have a board by law, the way nonprofits do, you might have an advisory board or even a fundraising committee or a friends of group that you may tap them to do a lot of different things as far as assisting your organization and supporting your organization. But one way might be that one of the responsibilities of even the advisory group or the friends of group would be to give some kind of donation. Again, something that's significant to the person or is a $250 gift or whatever it is that you decide. Those can be helpful parameters to utilize the commitment of people who want to serve your organization in some way. So now let's look at the donor life cycle. And we often talk about this like from your first date to proposal to a marriage. And you'll see here why we speak about it in that way, but that can give you a little bit of a reference when we talk about the donor life cycle. So the donor life cycle begins with acquisition, of course, goes next to cultivation, solicitation, and stewardship. And then it starts again. And it is kind of an ever evolving cycle here where we're always looking for more acquisition. This is not a one and done situation.
Wendy,
Yes.
could you share your slides again, please? We've just got your picture and it's lovely, but I think you're
Well,
referring to slides.
I am so sorry. I absolutely will. Thank you for letting me know. How's that?
That
Better?
looks great. We're on the question slide.
Yep. Let me get us forward. Here we go. And here. Thank you for letting me know, Rebecca. So here's our life cycle, kind of ever evolving, always working towards this with new acquisitions happening all the time. So let's think about acquisition. This is when you are identifying prospective donors, who's interested, who has the capacity to give. And this is the part that feels a little awkward sometimes because it feels like we're getting in people's business. And maybe that's my Southern capability here, but we just go, oh, that's kind of personal to ask or to find out what their capacity to give is and how much and what they make and where they've given before and all of those things. And yet that's actually an important part of identifying prospective donors because you want this to be worth your time. You want to capture folks who have the capacity to give. And that, as you know, is not everyone, but it is a lot of people. So thinking through some of these questions is an important part of this cycle. So our goal here is really to build a robust pipeline of potential supporters, and knowing that we're going to cast a very large net, and we're not going to get everyone, and that's okay, but this is where we start. So some places that we look. We want to look at our current volunteers who are clearly already invested in our mission in some way. Someone who has attended an event. That could be because they're a friend or a spouse of someone who's invested in your organization. It could be a longtime supporter. Who is on your list of your newsletter subscribers, your MailChimp list? Who are you communicating with? Certainly past donors. It is always easier to re-engage a lapsed or one-time donor than to find a new one. So we often suggest that folks start with who has given in the past. And some organizations have great records, some don't. But if you are particularly a nonprofit who has perhaps some kind of list of lapsed donors and a history there, that's helpful. And if you don't have it, start it now with who has given and who you have connections with. Certainly, again, individuals connected to your board members. So several of you suggested board members inviting friends or family to events or to give or to take a tour. People who are connected to your staff or certainly your current major donors. I would say even perhaps people connected to your mission participants, although I know that needs to be done very, very carefully and not soon after participation, perhaps. But if someone had a family member who perhaps went through a program that was a recovery program, perhaps, which I know is adjacent to your mission space, we're not going to ask for someone to be involved the next day, but we might a few years from now. Community members, local businesses aligned with your mission. So how do we find them? This is just some old-fashioned detective work from time to time. So you're going to look at database screenings, segmentations from different organizations. You can certainly purchase lists. Those typically are not as fruitful as doing the digging individually into your community. Getting out there and networking at community events to share your story, whether that's being a part of a local civic club, whether that's having a table at a community event, whether that's at an event that you're sponsoring, making sure that you are out and about in the community is really important, because if you remember, that relational donor is all about those relationships. This is not a transaction. This is a relationship. And so you've got to build it. You can monitor your social media engagement. Who's liking your posts if you have those? Who's asking to be friends? Who in your LinkedIn network is following or commenting on things that you're sharing? Again, marketing and fundraising are very, very connected. And so you can see that this can bleed into marketing strategies, and that's absolutely appropriate. So thinking about how you do that can be very, very helpful. And then certainly referrals from existing donors, from board members, again, from community members. That is maybe one of the easiest asks that you can give or that you can have. This is what we're doing in our community. Can you think of anyone that would benefit from that? That would, think about partnering with us in some way? I'm looking at a chat message. You're absolutely right that Instagram is connecting more with our folks these days rather than Facebook. My children say that only old people are on Facebook, and since I claim that title, I get that. But we might pause here for just a second to invite you to put something in the chat to say, where are some ideas that you've got to as a way to look for donors? Local chamber of commerce, community meetings, absolutely. Remind me when Substance Use Prevention Month is. That would be a great time to see if you can give presentations to civic organizations, to churches, to women's groups, all those kinds of things. Yeah, thanks for sharing in the chat. Your social media and your newsletters is a great place. We want to know who is subscribing, right? We want to have their contact information as much as we can. Never let anyone go by without sharing their email address with you. Yeah, thanks for sharing. These are absolutely the kind of places we're looking. As we go next in the donor life cycle, we're cultivating. And so cultivation is that growing relationship with the donor. Typically, it leads up to a solicitation for a gift. I would say at the very worst, it's going to lead to people understanding more about your mission. And you never know what seeds you're planting there. So even if something doesn't lead to an ask, your efforts are not in vain there. But part of your work here is to educate the prospect about the work of your organization. And of course, you need to be intentional about how you're going to do that. Is that a one-pager? Is that a tour? Is that a video that you've created? Is that talking over coffee? All of the above can be, but thinking about how are you going to educate folks about your work? And then you want to create opportunities for them to learn more. So maybe you start with a one-pager and then say, would you be open to doing a tour? Would you be opening to meeting with one of the neighbors that we've served? Would you be open to meeting with our staff person? And then you just have to do the nitty-gritty of building that relationship. Acknowledging life events is actually really important. Everybody likes to have a birthday card. If you see something in a publication where someone that you are hoping to work with has an accomplishment, if you're watching their LinkedIn pages, comment, celebrate, acknowledge what they're doing, because this is all part of the dating that we're doing. So thinking about what this looks like in a dating situation, kind of what you're doing in the cultivation stage of working with prospective donors. So as you're working with them, the goal here, of course, is to form the building blocks of a strong relationship before making a donation request. So you're going to focus on intentional engagement and education. Again, tours, coffees, send personalized updates on a program. You know, at coffee the other day, we were talking about this educational program. Here's a picture of one of our trainers in the field last week. I thought you would enjoy seeing this up close and personal. Just an email that's personalized and you're giving them an update. Providing opportunities can be really helpful for them to meet with program staff or clients. And that can be done, of course, in a variety of ways. I told you I was a nonprofit programs person and was often attending meetings with our CEO, whose responsibility was to raise funds in large part. And so she would often take me on site visits or on donor visits with her because I had the information about exactly what was happening in the program. So even if I wasn't comfortable making the ask, and that actually wasn't my role, that was her role, I was there to say, let me tell you the story about these parents that are receiving services in their homes for blank. Let me tell you about the neighbor in need that we worked with to provide food stamp outreach for. This is the conversation I had. And so I could really put a face with the dollars that we were asking for. And so providing that opportunity is really a great way to do that. If you have clients who have gone through the program or friends or relatives of clients, that can be a very powerful way to share a story. Again, you can see this goes into marketing, but that's part of what we're doing. Sometimes that can be done individually. It can even be done as a group. And so you may want to have a panel discussion with staff and clients participating, and you moderate an educational panel discussion that you're inviting a large group to. Again, you're not making an ask yet. You're building the relationship. You're helping to educate them on your program. You're wanting to look for ways to engage them. And so all of these pieces can be helpful. And then again, we're going to want to be intentional. Have a plan. So develop a cultivation plan where you are outlining specific actions and timelines and responsible staff for these high priority prospects. That's just one of the things we have to do if we're going to move towards individual giving. So focusing on what the donor cares about and how the organization can meet those interests, can connect with that mission space. Remember, these are opportunities for people to align their passions with your mission. And that can be a powerful thing and feels good for all of us, for those who are receiving the gift, but also for the giver. And so it is worth taking the time to think through, okay, we know Wendy has a birthday here, so we're going to make sure that is acknowledged. We know that she really likes to meet for coffee, so we're going to do that. We know that she used to go with her grandmother to deliver Meals on Wheels when she was a little girl, to take care of all the old people, of course. And so she's a great candidate to give to Meals on Wheels or to volunteer because she has a personal connection. Well, if you don't write that down, at least on a spreadsheet or something, why would you keep that in your head? But you can see how that could be an important piece of information that you'll want to have. So creating those cultivation plans is important. Here's actually an example of a way to do that. Just a very simple Excel sheet where you have the name, you have their occupation, certainly enter any donor or volunteer history. And that's not just with your organization, that's with any organization, because that helps you determine where their interests and passions lie. If you know their capacity, write it down, make a note of it. And this might, you're not going to have clearly access to bank records or things, but you can look at lists of donors from large organizations in your community. And you can oftentimes people list the huge list of folks on the back of their annual report or on the program for an event, the sponsors of that event or people who have given this past year. Make note of that. You're going to want a stack of those from your community and go through and see if Wendy was able to give to United Way at the gold level. She might be willing to give to us at the gold level or silver or whatever. But obviously giving is important to her. So she is now a candidate. So knowing that support to other organizations also helps you to know their capacity. And then having some kind of matrix to say, are they ready? We've had some cultivation. Actually, we need to reconnect. We don't know, or they're new. We don't have much history with this person. Tracking that. And then having that plan, the area of interest. They're interested in education. They're interested in treatment. They're interested in hosting an event. Whatever link they have to the organization, and then thinking through again with intentionality about how are we going to cultivate this relationship? When are we going to connect with them? What kind of communications are we going to give? What are the different avenues we can take to engage this person? So I'd love to hear from you and give you a few minutes to just think for a moment about 3 people that you might approach to share information with about your organization. We're not doing an ask yet. We're just sharing information. So thinking about community members, high profile community members, even better. Thinking about your neighbors, the neighbors of your participants, the neighbor of your board members, perhaps past participants or family members of past participants. business people who are perhaps already showing their commitment to the community by hosting events or sponsoring different kinds of events. But I'd love to know who else. So let me give you just a minute to reflect a bit. Feel free to put any of those categories in the chat that might spur the thinking of your colleagues who are on the call. But let's think for a moment. Who could we approach? Chamber of Commerce. Great. Oh, local health department. Jacqueline, thank you. Yeah, might have opioid funds to use. Ministerial Association. Great. I had not thought of that. Past board members, sure. Again, that reconnection, easier to do than a new ask. Youth meeting places. They want their youth to be safe, right? So how can we partner? Service clubs, education scholarship, yes. Churches, yes. The substance misuse prevention organizations that I've worked with personally do a lot of work with local churches. And I know we're in the Bible Belt, but that has been a successful partnership for them. Dion, that's great reflection on, we do have a donor, but he donates a lot for events, so it's not wise to come to him for individual giving. Absolutely. I get that. And I will just affirm that you know your community, you know your organization. And so you're wise to profile that person to know this is not a good fit. And totally hear you about needing large amounts. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Okay, just curious. Was that difficult? Was that hard to think of 3 people? Easy, hard? Give me a little icon to let me know. Hard. Fair. Not hard. Okay. Okay. I will say fundraising is not for the faint of heart. Particularly small organizations in small towns, that's even more challenging. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks for sharing. Let's move on here a little bit to solicitation. Solicitation is probably no one's favorite thing to do. Even very seasoned fundraisers will tell you, this isn't my very favorite part of the job, but it's asking for the gift. It may be a first gift, it may be renewed support, but you know the answer to this, I'm guessing. What's the number one reason people do not give? No one asks them. So we want to be the ones who ask, but be thoughtful about it. So questions like, who's the best person to ask? Is there a relationship? Is there history here? When is the prospect? And I kind of hate to use the word prospect, but it is explanatory, right? When are they ready to be asked? Always be able to say, join me in. Can I count on you to join me in giving? Because people, and that can be, again, I know a lot of us from the nonprofit world probably don't have the capacity to make large gifts. But if you have given in any amount, you can say, I'd love for you to join me in giving to this organization, because that shows authenticity. It shows that you're not asking anyone to do something that you haven't done, which can go a long way. So this is our proposal, if we're going to stick with our cultural metaphor here. So we have done the dating, and now we're asking and having the proposal of marriage. That's what solicitation is all about. So our goal here is to make a specific and compelling donation request. So some tips here to prepare. You want to actually rehearse the request. You want to have a clear and specific dollar amount in mind, and make sure that you have all the necessary materials ready. So that might be a case for support. It might be your logic model for the analytical types. It almost certainly is a donor story that you might share. But think about how you're going to start the conversation, what words you're going to use to make the ask, and then how you're going to end it. Sometimes I've heard people say, "You're great, you're flying, you've made the ask, and then you can't land the plane." And it's awkward and it's difficult. And so thinking through all of the components of the conversation. We always say that meeting in person whenever possible is best, with a team member, particularly if they know the person, but even if it's just, again, for additional information, take your program person along, take a former client along. Sometimes solicitations are done through direct mail or email. If you're going to do that, do make a targeted ask. Will you join me in committing to $25 a month for the next year? So you're giving them a specific goal here, and certainly as customized as you can make it. Thanks so much for coming. Thanks so much for engaging in our social media. We'd love to get to know you. That might be part of the cultivation, or you might go straight to, we'd love for you to become more engaged with a $20 gift this month, or whatever it is. And again, I'm using small amounts because that's often where we start. Clearly articulate the need and the impact. There's a reason why, food banks say your gift of $3 will provide 6 meals for children in need. Your gift of $5 will buy crayons for a child to start the school year right. Your gift of $500 will make sure that this person is able to receive treatment. Whatever it is, talk about the impact. Start with the ask, and then you can just stop and listen, because it's their turn to respond, and then your next steps are based on what they say. So, of course, if they say yes, you're going to express gratitude. You're going to outline the next steps. Thank you so much. That will really help our this, and this program. Would it be okay if I contacted you tomorrow with information about how we set that up, whatever that is? They might say no. They might say this isn't a good time, which is not a no. It's a maybe later. And so you can graciously accept that, and then you're going to need to go to Plan B for that. That's just part of it. Then we move into the stewardship phase, and stewardship is the work of taking care of something, right? And donor stewardship is taking care of a donor and building relationship with them. This begins immediately after the gift is made, and it becomes cultivation for the next gift. So stewardship is our marriage, right? And we know that strong marriages take some work. You can't ignore your spouse. You can't take your spouse for granted. And so part of our work is to make sure we are stewarding our donors well. So the goal here is to create that intentional engagement and outreach that will demonstrate both gratitude and impact. And so, of course, you're going to want to show gratitude immediately. Send a prompt, personalized thank you letter or email. For significant gifts, you want to make a phone call within 48 hours. You might want your CEO or someone else in your organization to do a follow-up phone call where they're getting double touches. Again, demonstrating that impact, whether that's stories or an annual report or inviting them to see your donation at work. And then cultivating it for the long term. So you're going to want to continue to send updates that are meaningful to them. And if you've done the cultivation piece, you will probably know what's meaningful to them. Are they in-person kind of folks? Are they extroverts? Are they introverts? Are they wanting to meet with just one or two people, or do they want to come to your big event? What kind of opportunities would they want? Do they want to volunteer? Do they not want to be acknowledged or spoken to after a gift? We talked about that when we first began training. It's some people don't want to, and that's okay. Just make note of that, right? But then think about ways you can make them feel valued and a part of the organization. Um, dig into the old what you know about love languages, even, right? Is it words of encouragement, or is it a gift, or is it time spent? All of those kinds of things that we sometimes have learned about in our personal and interpersonal relationships, they also make sense to think about in terms of donors, in terms of volunteers, in terms of staff members. All of those things show intentionality and really help to keep our donors in this stewardship phase. So some donor-centered appreciation tips. Again, probably goes without saying, but I've seen it not done, and it's really awkward. But list the names however the donor wishes to be acknowledged. Am I Mrs. John Ogren? Am I Mrs. Wendy Ogren? Am I Wendy Ogren? Am I Miss Wendy? How does the donor want to be acknowledged? And get their name right every time. Names change, people marry, people divorce. So making sure that the donor's name is correct is important. And then again, learn the donor's preference for acknowledgement, for appreciation. Some donors really want to engage, and as we learned, some do not. That is not a good or bad value statement. That just is what it is. But again, knowing that, putting that on your donor profile sheet so you don't forget, all of those things are really important to make sure you're appreciating folks in the way that feels right and good to them. So here's just an example of a donor-centered stewardship tracking, and we'll follow up with actually a little Excel sheet that might be helpful for you to use with some examples after our training today in a follow-up email. But just thinking through with intentionality, how are we going to acknowledge this gift? And this just gives you a process to follow, right? So first gift is a thank you within 48 hours. If it's the very first gift, below 1,000, perhaps below 500, below 2,000, whatever you decide, make sure you're including welcome language. Second gift, we're going to do thank you note within 48 hours. In fact, we're going to do that with every gift from now on. But some folks might be giving it a level, or even particularly if there's a relationship involved here, they need a secondary note from a board member, from your CEO, from a volunteer that they know. I don't know if you want to do that for a smaller gift, but you sure do want to do it for a major gift prospect or someone who has a first gift that's larger, right? So again, if you had somebody give $100 a month, they are now a major gift prospect, right? Because you've looked at cumulative giving as part of your strategy. And okay, now we need to up our game a little bit. Call from the ED, a call from the board chair, whoever can be impactful for that donor. That's certainly you want to involve that person for larger gifts. Think about how you want to recognize your donors. So you're probably not going to put a sign on your wall for a smaller gift, but you might decide anybody that gives $1,000 or more gets their name on a plaque somewhere, or gets, there's all kinds of donor walls you've seen, some way to acknowledge them. Maybe you're not going to do that until you have a larger gift. So it's a personal and organizational decision. But again, thinking through how are we going to recognize our donors is helpful. You're going to want to include everyone in some kind of annual report. What is not on here, the website is on here. Certainly if organizations or businesses are sponsoring an event, they want the publicity, and you're going to need to make sure you're publishing that. but think through a social media strategy. How are you going to recognize folks on social media? Thank you to Wendy, who became a sustaining member of KERA today. Here's a picture of Wendy. Here's Wendy's story. Whatever that is, again, looks different for each organization, but it's important to have a plan and think through before you're receiving the gifts. E-newsletter, that's an easy touch for everybody, but something that can be impactful. And the process continues, right? As I said, this is an ongoing cycle, and you can see each group gets smaller and smaller, and that's just the way individual donor works. So you start with a large group as you're looking at your acquisition, and it gets smaller with cultivation, smaller still with solicitation, and then you're going to need to steward that relationship. So if you had to guess, we have a poll here. Where should we spend the most time? Which one of these areas should take the majority of our time as we're working with individual donors? Choose one of those, would you? Okay. Okay, has everyone had a chance to weigh in here?
We've got about 50% of the people weighing in.
Okay. We've got some things in the chat. Okay. All right.
Should I end the poll?
Let's do. We'll show the results here. Well, you are right on track to say you don't spend much time on solicitation. So I don't think anyone shows that, and you're right, you don't. The guesses here were 56% said cultivation, 34% said stewardship, 10% said acquisition, and no one said solicitation. You're thinking correctly here. I will say though that stewardship is actually what is recommended to spend the most time on, because that leads to more acquisition. It is, as we said, easier to get a bigger gift, a more frequent gift, than to start new. And so you're going to want to spend a lot of time on that donor stewardship, because it will lead to typically additional, more impactful gifts. Thanks for participating with that. So just a few tips to stay donor-centered. Embrace culture of philanthropy. Everyone's a fundraiser. Everyone in your organization is a fundraiser, because they're helping you to tell your story. Focus on presenting the right message in the right place at the right time. Provide an array of access and options. I used to be a children's pastor and would always say some people want to teach Sunday school every week, and some people just want to sign up to help with VBS in the summer. Both are great. So provide a variety of access points and options for giving. Commit to excellence in your donor communication, and know that every day is Donor Appreciation Day. Donor interaction is two-way. We want to build a relationship. It's transparent. It's also strategic. So taking the time on the front end to do the work of planning is especially impactful. So just a few tips to integrate that donor-focused strategy. Again, breaking down traditional silos that separate donors. Individuals cross all paths, right? Individuals are running foundations and corporations, so making sure you're not siloing folks. committing to that donor-centered fundraising cycle for everyone. Overlapping messaging and outreach and events when you can. Every opportunity is a donor opportunity, is a fundraising opportunity, is an education opportunity, is a volunteer opportunity. You get the picture there. And if you have a marketing and communications team or someone who has responsibility for that, making sure you're partnering with them, because you want to include messages for donors as often as possible, and you want them to be appropriate for donors. So I wanted to make sure you have information for just some additional information. I found these articles helpful, proven strategies for boosting fundraising success. In Forbes Nonprofit Council was helpful. Just some additional fundraising strategies to grow that individual giving. That blog is a good one that might be helpful for you. And then we'll just end our time here with a few questions for reflection. I won't go over all of these, but they will be in the slides that we send out, and just give you some things to, on your own, be thoughtful about, some questions for reflection that may be helpful for you as you move forward in this journey. So there's 2 pages of that. I want to be respectful of your time here. But happy, Chris, if we've got time to answer a few questions. If not, also will share my contact information here, and would certainly love to hear from you if I can answer any questions or help in any way. Here's my contact information. Email is probably the best way to get a hold of me, but I'm happy to visit with you if that's helpful.
All right. Well, I think we're quickly running out of time, but there's 2 questions in the Q&A. I'm wondering if we could send those to you and have you answer them. I think they're pretty quick responses. If we could write out a response and send that in the follow-up.
Happy to.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Wendy, for your time today. I learned a lot. This is not an area I know much about, so I am greatly appreciative of all the knowledge and expertise that you shared with us today. I do have a couple of ending slides for everybody so that you know about some upcoming events that we have coming up. We started a Foundations in Substance Misuse Prevention webinar series last week. The weeks are running into one another. I believe it was last week, of a Prevention 101, which is available as a recording now. Our next one in the series is going to be protective factors. Then we're going to do risk factors, what does not work, selecting evidence-based strategies, and logic models. So if you're interested in any or all of those trainings, please feel free to sign up for those webinars. We also have some intensive training courses that are just I should say not just for our region, but the folks in our region are prioritized for these because there's a limited number of folks that we can take into them. Ethics and prevention, that is, we actually have 1 slot available left. So if anybody in here wants to try to get that 1 slot, I do have 1 slot left for ethics and prevention. Virtual SAPS is going to happen in January, virtual prevention core competencies in February. Few more upcoming trainings, and this is actually not quite a training, but we have coffee break networking. We've heard from people that they really want to connect with other folks who are working in substance misuse prevention. If you want to join us for just short half-an-hour sessions where you can connect with other preventionists, we'd love to have you there. We're going to have a storytelling strategies for funding success, the art of the conversational pitch, which builds on what Wendy's talking about here. So if you want to learn more about that, join us on November 20th. If you want to look at AI more, of using generative AI in your substance misuse prevention work, that's December 9th. And then building on that is leveraging AI chatbots for substance misuse prevention, data analysis, and reporting. So if you're wanting to learn more about that, join us on December 16th. And with that, we're going to close out with a reminder to please complete the GIPRA evaluation form that you will be redirected to once we close out of here. And also, Rebecca put the link in the chat. This is really valuable for us to know what worked well for you with a session, what else we could do differently in the future, or in addition in the future. I do read every single comment, so please know it does not go into a black hole. And we appreciate your active involvement in this training. And then once again, a huge thank you to you, Wendy, and also to Rebecca, who's done all the background work for this that is essential to make this happen. So thank you to you all. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, everyone.